I heard the testimony of a former Christian pastor who converted to Islam. He mentions that he was talking to an atheist a few years back before that event, and the atheist asked him, "Do you need to believe Jesus is God in order to earn salvation?" And the pastor in question, or the former pastor, didn't have an answer at the time, and he's saying that that was always unresolved in his head. And later on, in conversation with Muslims, he realized he didn't understand, or he couldn't understand or believe the Trinity, and so he left and became a Muslim. So the first thing I'd say to that is, in the Bible, Jesus claims many times to be equal with the Father. The confusing part for many people who read the Bible is that sometimes Jesus is speaking about his human nature, and other times he's speaking about his God nature, being one of the persons of the Trinity, being of the same substance of the Father, however you want to put it. And so Jesus was the God man. So when he says in John chapter 17 to God the Father, when he says, "You are the only true God and I am your son," he's talking about his human nature there, which always must be subject to God. And then later on in John or Matthew, he says, "I and my Father are one." And he says in another place, "If you've seen me, Philip, you've seen the Father." He's referring to his God nature. When John in chapter 1 testifies that the Word of God was with God in the beginning and was God, John is testifying what Jesus himself taught and evidently believed and testified, that he was God. So you have to look at all the things that Jesus said, not fixate on one, to understand the full picture. And Jesus also said, and many of his apostles testified, that there was no sin in him. So if he lies, then you can't trust anything he says. Is my argument here. You shall know them by their fruits. You see, if Jesus claimed to be fallible, then yes, it's okay. He could have been right about some things and wrong about others. But Jesus claimed to be infallible. And his apostles testified that they could find no fault with him. Even the Muslim text alludes to this fact. When you talk to Muslims, they even say Christ had no sin. Jesus of Nazareth, the prophet had no sin. That's what they say. Well, you shall know them by their fruits. Is there any man without sin? God's testimony himself in the scriptures is that no, there is not. We're all gone out of the way. We all become unrighteous. like a filthy menstrual rag, says Isaiah, or testifies Isaiah. So therefore, if Jesus was wrong when he said, I and my Father are one, then how can we trust him when he says later, I am the truth, the way, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. It all collapses. So yes, you have to believe. You have to see who Jesus truly is, according to discernment given to you by the Spirit of God, the third person of the Trinity. In other words, you have to have faith towards God. You have to believe on him, to use another phrase. Not just believe in him, you have to believe on him.